What's happening? If you are joining in to our CCV live right now, we're going to get started in just a minute. We'll let some people join in here. Hope everyone is having a good night. We're excited to be with you. We'll let a few people join in here before we get started. No matter where you're joining in from in Arizona, the weather is amazing right now. Mm-hmm. That's why we live here. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a good day.
It is good. Hey, if you have a question, we have some questions that were submitted already in, and so we'll be answering some of those a little later on. If you have a question, if you want to make a comment down below, we'll make sure we'll try to do our best to answer as many questions as we can. We obviously won't be able to get to all of them, but we're just happy to have so many people joining in, not only from our church, but maybe across the country. If you're joining at CCV, we know that there's singles who want to date. There's people that are dating here from all different sorts of ages. There's also probably some parents joining in who would love to know more about their kids and dating. So we're gonna dive into this conversation. If you were with us this past weekend, we kicked off a series called The Relationship Equation. And the whole premise behind this series is that relationships work when they're done God's way. And we've been looking at some biblical models for how to have a relationship. And tonight we want to talk directly to those of you that are single and dating, or you'd like to date. One of the progressions we talked about is a model from a man named Dr. John Epps, where when you're starting a relationship, there is a progression that needs to take place for the relationship to work. And the progression is simply this, that you first get to know someone, then you trust someone, and you don't move on past trust. You don't trust someone before you really know them. And when you know and trust someone, you can start relying on them. And after you rely on them, then you can make a commitment to them. And then after that commitment, then comes touch. And so what we talked about this last weekend was simply getting to know someone. And we want to just dive a little bit deeper in that today. But we thought we'd start by telling you a little bit more about our first dating relationship, if that helps you. So it's fair to say before we met each other, we dated, both of us dated quite a few people. Is that correct? Who do you think dated more people?
You.
I don't know if that's.
I don't know if it is or not, but let's just say you.
Okay, let's just
say
we'll say it was me. But we both feel like before we met each other dating, we made a lot of mistakes in a dating relationship, to the point where independently of each other, we decided that we wanted to do things completely differently from that point on. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think that's really fair. And what is so cool about that is up until that point, both of us had not really put God first in our relationships. And the minute it's just so cool, the minute we decided to do that, I don't know, we met like 6 months later, yeah. And we were both independently working on ourselves. And that's when God had us intersect, which is just incredible.
Yep. So when we met each other, we'll tell you our first date. Okay, here's how we met. Here's how we decided to date. We were at the same college, a little small college, and Jaime and I had kind of run into each other, and we both thought each other was. We both were like a little initially attracted to each other, and I was trying to figure out how to ask her out on a date. There wasn't texting, there was no social media, so I had to like figure out how to ask her out without like feeling like a fool. I the way I asked you first, I acted like a fool. The way I asked Jaime out for the very first time is I said, hey, I'm going to go play in this volleyball game in Huntington Beach, California at the time. And it was a long drive away. And in California, the traffic's so bad. I said, hey, would you come with me? Because if I take the carpool lane, then it's faster. That's literally how I asked to hang out with you for the first time, right?
That's true.
And I think but you said yes.
I said yes. Yeah, I said yes.
So
it worked. I guess it worked.
So that it worked. And we started hanging out from then on. I mean, we were a little bit inseparable from that, like from that one night. But I would say when we first started dating, we were getting to know each other a little bit. But when you first start dating someone, the only thing you really know is that you're attracted to someone, right? And that's like, well, I was just attracted to you. You were attracted to me. But what we'd realized from our previous relationships is that attraction isn't enough. And if you hear something today, just realize this, that when you first meet someone, there's such a chemistry, there's such an attraction to each other, but that's the one thing that actually, I think you would say it's actually kind of a little shallow in some ways.
Yeah, I think that it just, of course, attraction is important.
It's important. Don't get us wrong. You need to be attracted to someone. It's important.
Yeah, but I think where this goes sideways is we think we really, if we were honest, we think that that's all that matters. And if we base our relationships off something so shallow, how can we expect anything else but a shallow relationship? And those are the relationships that just are wounding time after time because we're not willing to do anything different.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we were at, is we had both done that and we were ready for something really that God had set before us. And that was a pre-decision we made.
Yep.
So we pre-decided that we were going, before we met each other, that we were ready to radically do things different. And that was really to put God first in our relationship. So what do you think what did that look like for you?
Well, okay, is this fair? Previously, before we kind of decided to do things differently, when we were attracted to each other, we probably would have been making out on a first date.
Oh man, you were so cute.
Oh yeah, I was crazy attracted to you.
You had feathered hair.
Yeah, I had feathered hair at the time. It was pretty awesome. But honestly, we would have jumped straight forward in the relationship previously to meeting each other. But we'd made so many mistakes, we decided to do things differently. And so, like I shared this last weekend, we really waited to progress in the relationship. And I think the question I want to start off with, and then we're going to get into some of your questions today. Okay, so if you have questions, keep asking them. But I think the question is, when you start a relationship, what do you really need to know about someone to know if you really need to know what you should know? Is that fair? Oh, it's a little tongue
I'm glad
twister.
you said that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think
what do you need to know? What the most important thing you should start to get to know with someone is you need to learn about their faith. And the most important thing you can know about someone is are they truly, if you are a Christian, you need to know, are they following Jesus too? Is their faith real? And I'd really dig on this one, because I wouldn't just ask someone, hey, are you a Christian? And if they say yes, like that's all you need to know. You need to dig a little bit and understand, like, where is their faith at? And is it compatible with where you're at in your faith journey? One of the first questions someone asked when we were asking these questions is, hey, is it okay to date someone that's not a follower of Jesus? And our caution to you would be, if you're a follower of Jesus, to date someone that isn't, there's really no basis of that in Scripture. And I want to tell you why, because the word Scripture uses is, it says, don't be unequally yoked with someone. And a yoke is just this instrument that goes over two things that helps them pull together. So imagine just a yoke is a farming piece of equipment that you put over two oxen. It hooks on so together they can go further and be stronger together. But if you yoke yourself to someone who's not a Christian, you'll be going one way, they'll be going another way, and you will literally rip each other apart over time. And you may not see that at the beginning because you think we're attracted and we're nice to each other, but long term, think about marriage, you're going to be dealing with things that are so complex, like you have kids. Well, what do you do? One are you going to raise your kids in a Christian environment, the other than not? That pulls you apart. It pulls you apart so strongly. We wouldn't recommend that at all.
Yeah, I think it would just be hard to have a God honoring relationship when you don't start that way.
Yeah.
It's just, it will be a constant worry, a constant struggle, and to me it just seems like that is really the foundation at which all great relationships start.
That's right. Now, what else would you say someone needs to really get to know about someone when they're first dating?
I would say, other than really digging on their faith, on their faith journey and what that looks like. And if they're not comfortable talking about their faith, that's probably an indication of where they're at. I would say that, so you want to know, obviously, their family background. What does that look like? How do they treat people? How do they treat their siblings? How do they talk about their family? There are no perfect families. Like, I didn't come from a perfect family. We don't have a perfect family. However, how do they talk and treat about their family? Is it grace-filled? Is it loving?
Yeah.
Are they a reflection of where they came from, or are they and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's really important for you to get to know someone's family background, because to expect that someone's family background is not going to impact them, that is crazy naive. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know from psychological research that half of what you know in your lifetime is learned before you can even talk. So our family relationships and backgrounds really impact us. So you really need to look at that family background, see how it's playing out in a partner, and don't just watch how they treat you. You need to really watch how they treat other people.
Are they trustworthy? Are they trustworthy? Worthy? Are they responsible? Are they disciplined? Are they on time? Those are all things that remember. This is what you talked about this weekend. The ceiling. Like, you cannot expect this to it might change some, but you can't have to go into it expecting a lot of those things not to change.
Yeah.
Or it will be a constant source of frustration.
I would watch a couple other things to get to know about someone, get to know their personality type. You can take a lot of personality assessments to see that, which is kind of fun for you to see maybe how those work out together. I would get to know if someone's vulnerable. Are they appropriately vulnerable, or are they always holding back, telling you things? Can they be appropriately vulnerable? You don't want someone on the first date that just, blabbers everything, but are they really vulnerable over time with you? Can you trust them with small things? Those are good. What else were you going to say?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I was going to say something.
I would also get to know how they handle conflict. I really think you need to watch how people handle conflict. When you get into a conflict, do they always run away? Do they shut down? A lot of those things don't change a whole lot over time, because that's somewhat how people handle conflict. So
also, I think how they interact with your family.
Yeah.
Because that is in marriage, that is one of the conflicts that most people deal with at some point. Is it's the in-laws, and so you want to, if they don't get along with your family now, I don't know that you can expect them to really, this is their best foot forward. I don't know that you can really expect them to honor and get along with your parents and in your family in the future. I remember what I was going to say. What I was going to say is we always tell our girls, you don't date anyone for their potential.
Amen.
You cannot base your relationship off someone of what you think they could be. It's really who they are.
Yeah, that may be one of the, if you got like one nugget of advice tonight just watching this, that might be the one thing you take away, is don't ever date someone for their potential. So many people date someone thinking, well, maybe they'll change over time, it'll get better over time. The likelihood is that's not going to happen. You date them for who they are today, and do you like what you're getting today? That's a really important piece of advice.
I think I've heard you say this before. Okay, so correct me if I'm saying it wrong.
Okay.
That there are 6 billion, is that right?
There's 8 billion people on the planet.
I already got it wrong.
Yeah.
There's 8 billion people on the planet. There is no reason you should settle. Amen.
Gosh. I mean, there's so many people out there, and the reason we settle is we think, well, God may not have someone else for me. It's like, gosh, trust God with this one in your relationship. So
yeah, and I think also, I think what's so cool about this season of being single is life is just a practice in trust. It's I daily have to trust the Lord for tomorrow. And when you're single, this is a very tangible way for you to start learning how to trust the Lord on an everyday basis. Yeah. Trusting that the Lord has his best for you. Let's start walking in obedience now when you're however old, and you will walk in obedience tomorrow, and those trust muscles just get built over and over time. And what's cool about being single is that's a very tangible way to see God's faithfulness. Whether he brings the right person or not, I feel like if we just keep trusting him and trusting him and trusting him, we will be blown away by how faithful he is.
Totally. Hey, we're going to talk a little later on about creating a dating manifesto and what that looks like. And I think this is a really key thing that you can create to really do dating right. But we're going to dive straight into some of your questions, all right? Because I know a lot of you have questions, and we're going to try to dive into your questions as much as we can. So here's a few questions I know people had submitted before tonight. How can you start with like knowing someone if you've already skipped a lot of the steps? You're already to touch, right? You're already to touch. And what we would say is you have to have a course correcting conversation. Yeah. If you are way in, like, if there's a lot of sexual activity in a relationship and you've kind of skipped the steps of really like knowing, seeing if you can trust, rely, really all that, as hard as this may be, I think you should have a conversation with who you're dating and try to take the touch meter way down so you can start focusing on getting to know them first. Mm-hmm. I think that a big question people have is like, what should be the boundaries in dating when it comes to touch? How much touch is too much? How much isn't enough? You know, I mean, there's so many opinions out there about how far you should go. So let us try to add a little bit of clarity here without being dogmatic about it, okay? What we would say is that one of the most important conversations you should have early on in a dating relationship is what your physical boundaries are going to be. So set those physical boundaries before, don't just rely on your own willpower, because we all know where willpower gets us, right? Willpower gets you nowhere. So don't put yourself in compromising situations and expect that you're just going to be strong. You need to have some boundaries, and you need to come up with what those boundaries are for you and the person you're dating. What we would say is like, usually when someone says, hey, how far can I go? That means they want to just have an excuse to go too far. We think you don't ever hear a married couple say, you know what our issue is? We didn't have enough physical touch when we were dating. We didn't have enough sexual activity. We hear the exact opposite, that there are a lot of issues because you were too sexually active while dating, and then it causes some issues later on in marriage. So while you're dating, as crazy as it sounds, our advice would be to have, between like neck and knees, just no touching of private parts. That'd be a really great boundary. Obviously, we think not having sex is a really important thing to hold off until marriage. And that may seem old-fashioned to you, but I can promise you, you will never regret that decision. And many of you aren't there. You've already made a mistake. And listen, there's grace. God has crazy grace if you made a mistake there. But I'm just saying, if you're starting off, I think that's a really good place to start, which is to have, obviously not have sexual intercourse, but I think as much as you can, not to be touching of sexual parts is a great boundary. And the only way you're going to be able to do that in a dating relationship, because none of us are that strong, is to not put yourself in compromising situations. So one boundary might be, hey, we're not going to put ourselves in a situation where we're home alone all the time, right? That's going to be a really tempting situation. Would you add anything there?
I just think that's also something you have to pre-decide before you're in a relationship. So if you're single right now or just getting to know somebody, that's actually something you should decide ahead of time, because if you decide after the fact, it's too late. Yeah. And also those are, when you get to the point where you're actually in a relationship, it's leading in a way that maybe you start kissing, you need to have that conversation before the first kiss.
Yeah.
And if they are not in sync with you or cannot respect your boundaries, that's a warning sign. You run.
Yeah, if someone can't respect your boundaries now, they likely will not respect your boundaries in the future, whatever they are. Now, I want to talk maybe to those of you that have been divorced. You've been in a marriage or a relationship that was already sexual. I think this is even harder for you, because once you've been sexually active, it is so hard when you get in a relationship for it not to turn sexual right away. So for you, the key is to not put yourself in situations where you're going to be tempted, because you know how quickly it can go sexual if you've already had sexual activity in the past. So I think that those are some physical boundaries. I want to talk to you about some emotional boundaries too. One boundary we really encourage dating couples to do is not talk about marriage too soon. We think couples talk way too fast about marriage, and what that does is it puts you in a future state too fast, and it puts you where you're not really getting to know someone. You're beginning to rely and commit to them way before you know and you can trust them. So our recommendation would be in the first 12 to 18 months of a relationship, don't really have conversations about marriage or a ton of future stuff. Now, that's if you're under the age of 25, okay? If you're over the age of 25 or you're a little bit older, we think relationships progress a little bit faster. So, but I'd still hold off having the marriage conversations. Don't have them too soon. We just think they happen a little too soon.
Yeah, I think before you know, it's really if you just keep watching the messages on the weekends for this series, and you'll talk about all the different areas, and you just want to make sure when you're talking about marriage, you're really jumping the commit to
That's
commit.
Right. That's right.
And so you want to make sure you know, trust, rely, really get a picture of what who that person is before you commit to them. Because I know, like especially as a female, once we started talking about marriage, which I think it took us 2 years.
It took us 2 years to talk about that,
and
at least.
And a breakup.
And a breakup, yep.
Yeah.
That was a sad breakup.
I had a sad minute.
We broke up. Yeah, we broke up. We did. Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
But it was because the breakup really, like just very honestly, was a course correction.
It was.
We needed a massive course correction, and it took a breakup to make that happen. And I think that's also, as I was talking about, like a trusting God with your future. Like we did not know if we were going to get back together.
Yep.
And God just saw fit to bring us back together, and I think that was very clarifying for us. So
talking about marriage too early is basically you skipping know, trust, rely, and jumping right to commit. And we think that's a bad mistake. So really watch that from an emotional standpoint. I'd also watch real early in dating, sharing too much too soon. Be appropriate in your response. Let's move on to some other questions.
And keep submitting questions. Yeah. Keep submitting questions and we'll get to them.
Someone asked, while dating, how do you know when it's time to let someone go versus it's time to work harder? So a lot of you are in a relationship potentially right now where you're going like, hey, should I just work harder at this relationship because it's not going great? Or should I cut it off and be done with this person? That's a great question. And I want to remind you what I said this past weekend, which is two things. Okay, these are like dating disclaimers. One is how they treat you now is the ceiling for your marriage. I mean, I cannot say this enough. People don't understand. They think when we get married, all the struggles we're having today, they're all going to get better. Wrong.
Yeah.
Unless it's a miracle situation, how they treat you today is the ceiling. So if they're not treating you well today, take that forward for the rest of your life and marriage potentially. And if you don't like that picture, it's time to be done. The other disclaimer I gave you is that the bad usually gets worse. And I know there's exceptions to this, but usually what's bad in a relationship only gets worse because they're putting their best foot forward right now with you. So if what's happening right now is not good and you don't like it, and you can't see spending the rest of your life dealing with the same things, it's probably time to end the relationship. And by the way, just ending the relationship can be a nice course correction where both of you maybe need to work on yourselves outside of each other. And maybe there's still potential for you down the road. But if you don't like what you're getting now, it's time to end the relationship. And it goes back to don't date someone for their potential, right?
Yeah. And I think you also, what would be great is to bring others in that know you and love you and get their opinion on, hey, this is what's going on. Because sometimes, remember from the message this last weekend, your brain might be teeny tiny, right? Yeah. And you can't even see what is so clearly obvious to everyone else. So if you're asking that question, number one, I would say very honestly, you might already know the answer to that question if you're asking it. Number two, I would immediately bring in some trusted people around you, explain the situation, and really trust their advice because they love you and know what's best for you. Probably.
Yeah, I think that's gold advice, because remember, when you're dating someone and you're trying to make a decision, do I continue to work at it or do I just end it? What makes that decision so hard is, especially if you're within the first 18 to 20 months of a relationship, remember, your decision making in your mind isn't working well. So you're all confused. So the best thing you can do is bring someone into your life that knows you the best, loves you the most, and has seen your interactions with the person you're dating, and ask their advice. Do you think I should continue in this relationship with what you see today? And if that person that loves you the most, knows you the best, and has seen your interactions says no, and they're a follower of Jesus that's wise, it would be incredibly dumb of you to continue that relationship. That's crazy. So I think that's really wise to get other people's advice.
And then the next step would be act on it.
Yeah, act on it.
And that's actually
that's the hard one.
And that's the hard one. And that's where we're like building our trust muscles for God to be faithful in our life.
Here's the next question. Will a guy's porn addiction go away after we get married?
Wow, that's tough.
And I want to answer this really clearly. The answer is unequivocally no. It will not. In fact, not only will someone's porn addiction not go away, it will likely get worse. Because again, what people assume is that when we get married and we can have sex and there's no guilt and all that stuff, maybe all this porn addiction will just go away. Wrong. An addiction is an addiction, and it carries into the relationship. And in fact, it can get worse. A porn addiction can get worse. And let me tell you why. Because in a marriage relationship, you put the expectations higher on each other with what happens with sex. And let's say for a guy, let's say the sexual relationship's not going great, and that happens in a marriage relationship, they'll turn directly to porn even harder than they did before. And so please hear me, if you're with someone that has a porn addiction today, listen, it's time to get help. And it's time to help that person get into some counseling, because it is an addiction. A porn addiction is no different than an alcohol addiction. It changes your brain chemistry, and your brain, you need help. And sometimes you need professional help. And a lot of men, even women today, the best thing you could do would be to go see a Christian counselor, get some help. And there's a lot of resources out there to do that. But if you're with someone that has a porn addiction, please understand, when you get married, it will not go away. I promise you that.
Yeah. And I think, and if that's you and you're struggling with a porn addiction, there's hope for you.
Amen. Yeah.
Seek. That's why our campus pastors at all of our campuses are, I wish you could know all of them. They're incredible people, and they're incredible resources, and they, campus pastors and associate pastors, they love you, and they're there for you, and they want to walk this battle with you. You have a team of people who love you and want the best for you, and they have resources at their fingertips. You just have to reach out, and there's healing and hope for everyone.
There's hope for any addiction. Please hear that. Any addiction, there's always hope, but there can't be hope unless you get help. Yeah. So get some help if that's you. Another question someone asked is, how important are gender roles in a relationship? Can a woman lead a relationship? Our opinion on this would just be that one person should not dominate in the relationship. So if you're a female today and you're with a male that is domineering, red flag. Guys, if you're with a female who is domineering, always wants to lead the relationship, we think that's a red flag. We think the biblical model in marriage is mutual submission. Now, we think God has uniquely designed men to lead in some ways, and so I think there's some submission there. But that's not a dominating. If you saw our relationship, we submit to each other all the time. And there is not a me going like, it's my way or the highway, and Jamie's not going, it's my way or the highway. It's us helping rely on each other. It's that rely piece.
And I think when one person domineers over another, that's not leading at all.
It's not. Leadership's not domineering. Leadership is like getting the best out of the other person. So,
and I think that's what's so cool about marriage is really valuing each other.
Yeah.
And like what you bring is God ordained inside you, and what I bring is God ordained inside me. And then when we can respect and mutually submit to each other and put our each other's interests above our own, that's when like really cool things happen in the marriage.
And I would say this, if I'm leading Jaime well, as a leader of our family, if I'm leading her well, it means that I'm listening to her really, really well. That's what leadership is. Leadership is not you on your own. It's you relying on other people. That's really important. Okay, advice for people that are divorced and starting over. And I know a lot of you maybe joining in here, you are divorced, you've had a relationship fail, and you're thinking, how long should I wait before I start over? What should I do? And our best advice to you would be to go as slow as you can. And our advice would be to wait 1 year before you start dating again and after divorce. And I know that seems like an eternity for many of you. But the thing that I think is deceptive in your mind is after you've had a divorce, you think to yourself, well, I know what doesn't work in a relationship. That means my next relationship will work. And that's just simply not true. When you go through divorce, it's so painful. I think you need to let your heart and your mind and your soul heal before you jump right back into a relationship. Because sometimes that rebound relationship goes way too fast and it's not good. So I think waiting 1 year at least is very wise. And what do you do during that year? You begin to heal and you begin to think, what do I really want in my next relationship?
And also there's also a maturing process is really just that I've seen in my friends, of really owning what you're responsible for, because what you had in the last marriage you will probably carry into the next relationship. The unhealth that I had in my last relationship I will probably carry forward into the next one, if I don't mature through that and really find some healing and really spiritual renewal.
I'm going to answer some other questions that some of you are texting in today. Someone said, within the context of the elements mentioned in your message, please discuss your views on sexuality between divorced Christians that are dating now after they've both been married for 20 plus years. And I think we touched on that a little bit before. I think, you know, if you've been divorced and you were married for 20 plus years and you're just, you've obviously had a lot of sexual activity. You've really got to watch that sexual activity going into the next relationship and just really set, I think, some good boundaries. Someone said, I had a past relationship that made me lose trust. What can help me rekindle that in a future relationship? And I want to tell you that's, I won't go deep into that now because that is all this next week's message. I'm going to talk completely about trust. And if your trust has been destroyed because someone had an affair on you or something came out that you had no idea and someone destroyed your trust, I'm going to talk this next weekend about how to rebuild trust, because it's a critical element to every relationship. In fact, they say trust is like gas to a car in a relationship. You can sit in a car all day long that doesn't have gas, but it's not going to go anywhere. In a relationship that doesn't have trust is not going to go anywhere either. So I hope you'll tune in this weekend.
And I think
to hear
also
about that.
in the dating process, that is probably something that should be on everyone's radar. Are they a trustworthy person? Because that is a non-negotiable.
Totally.
Are they trustworthy? Because if they lie to you now, even the small ones, they will lie to you in the future.
So true. Someone asked, what advice do you have for someone who doesn't have a lot of dating experience but wants to start dating? And that's a great question. We would recommend 2 books to you. The first book is a book by Gary Thomas. It's called Sacred Search. We think this is an incredible resource that will help prepare you for dating. The other book we've been promoting throughout the series is How to Not Fall in Love with a Jerk. This is we think these 2 books are great resources to give you some advice for dating. A lot of people ask, where would I go to find someone that I should date? I mean, what are your options nowadays? We think one of the best ways that you can meet people to see who might be potential to date is to get really, really involved at church. Whether you go to CCV or go to another local church, the more involved you get in church, the more you just rub shoulders with people that are probably single, maybe in your same life stage. We know so many people that have met because they got into a small group. We have singles and we have young adult groups. We know so many people that have met someone in a small group, so we really recommend that. You can jump on our app and you can search all of our groups and find young adult groups and single groups.
Or talk to your associate pastor.
Or
they
talk-
have a great, at each
Yeah.
campus, they have great insight into really what's going on at your campus.
Yep, talk to your associate pastor. We also think with just serving at church, when you serve, you're going to be around a lot of people, and we think that's a great way. And by the way, it gives you a chance to observe someone else serving, which is really
for
fun.
Sure.
We're also not opposed to dating apps or online dating. Watch the app, okay? Watch the app or watch what you use. But I think it can be okay to meet someone online because it might give you a chance to begin to know someone, just talking to someone before you actually meet them. But be very careful there because people can put their best foot forward. And you don't want to just listen to what someone says. To really know them, you have to observe how they act. Let's answer a few more questions. And you can put these questions in the comments if you want to hear some answers to any other questions. Just put them in the comments, and we'll try to answer them as much we can. Here's another question. What can I do when my partner and I are long distance and we want to prevent things from going too far too soon when we have limited time together?
Good question.
That's an unbelievable question. Do you say anything to that?
Well, I think you've talked about it a little bit. Not to put yourself in tempting situations.
It's so good. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are just simply not alone. They don't put themselves alone together. Like fully alone, nobody around. Like in our house, we have teenage girls, and they are not alone in our home together with their whoever they're dating in our house together, and that's just sort of a rule, and it's worked out really well in our house.
Yeah, and just to be super vulnerable, let's be vulnerable with us, okay? We dated for 3.5 years before we got married.
Yeah.
And we set like these physical boundaries for ourselves, right? And here's what we know. We were not perfect. We weren't. We messed up a lot of times. And what the common denominator every single time we messed up with a physical boundary is we put ourselves in a compromising situation. Like, let me give you an example. Do you think it's going to be easier to hold to a physical boundary if you go to a movie in a movie theater or you watch a movie alone in an apartment or in your home? I mean,
Right.
duh. So just be careful the situations you put yourself in if you really want to hold to a physical boundary. We think a lot of group dates. We think a lot about like dates, that you get out and you're in places where you just may not find yourself as tempted is going to be really, really.
I think also
key.
I just know this is happening, so I just need to say it. You should never be sleeping over at somebody's house.
Yeah.
Never. That is
Completely.
just
Yep.
that is only in the context for marriage, and you will find yourself in a situation
Yeah.
that you might regret.
And people, sometimes people ask us, like, what do you think about couples living together before marriage? And the thought process is, well, shouldn't you test drive a car before you buy it? Listen, marriage is not buying a car. Okay, it's a lifelong commitment. And here's what we know. We know. Couples that live together before they're married, the divorce rate is 50 to 80% higher than those couples that don't. So if you're thinking about living together, my question to you would be, would you get on an airplane that had a 50 to 80% higher likelihood of crashing? That's crazy. Why would you do that? So you don't have to live with someone to see if you're compatible with them. And by the way, you don't have to have sex with someone to see if you're sexually compatible with them. Let me let you in a little secret. You are sexually compatible with millions and millions of people. And sexual compatibility has less to do, by the way, with like somewhat to the physicalness of it, has much to do more with like the actual emotional and spiritual bond that you have with someone. Because sex is not just physical. That's the biggest lie our culture tells us today, is that sex is just physical. It's not. It's spiritual and it's emotional. And to have true intimacy with someone, not just an act of sex, to have true intimacy with someone it requires that you really try to do things God's way, right? Let's maybe ask a question. Someone says, I've been widowed for 3 years now. How do I put Christ in my life? What advice would you have for a person in that situation? I think first of all, if you've been widowed for 3 years and you had someone that died, we're really, really sorry for that situation. But I think you do to put Jesus first, especially in your relationships. I think it's really important to surround yourself with some good people that can help support you during this time. And if you're going to start dating again, just rely on some other people that can help guide you along in the process.
And if you're 54, that means you've had some life, and start emptying your cup into others. Start like offering what the Lord has like working in what He's shown you, what He's doing in your life. And what's so cool about the younger generation is they are ripe to listen and learn from those ahead of them, which is just so cool. And so just put yourself in an environment where you have a ton. I can guarantee you, if you're asking that question, you have a ton to offer.
That's right. Hey, I want to offer just a little advice to someone who is thinking, what would I do to set up a great dating relationship? And what we encourage people to do is to write a dating manifesto. You might say, what is that? A dating manifesto is you deciding in advance what you want and what you're going to look for in someone before you ever start dating them. Because remember, the moment you start dating someone, you start losing your mind. All your critical decision making goes down. So what we encourage people to do is literally take out a piece of paper, get a blank piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and write on one side what your non-negotiables are in looking for someone, dating, and on the other side, write your nice-to-haves. Like, what would be some non-negotiables? Non-negotiable would be they have to be a follower of Jesus if you're a Christian here today. And I know that sounds obvious, but what happens in so many relationships is if you don't write that down and pre-decide that, you're going to meet someone that looks really, really cute
and doesn't love the Lord
and doesn't love Jesus, and you're going to convince yourself it's okay.
Yeah.
So follow Jesus. You might want to write down some other things. Write down what your non-negotiables would be with someone. Then write some nice-to-haves. And you can have some fun with these. Hey, I'd like to date someone that's tall. I'd like to date someone who likes this sport, something. I mean, you can have some fun, nice-to-haves.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, are cats non-negotiable?
That's I'm going to have to think about this one for a second. Like, if you loved cats,
If I loved cats.
If you loved cats,
Maybe I do. Maybe I actually secretly love cats.
Would I still have married you?
This whole time, what if I love the cats?
And the answer is, if you loved cats, I still would have married you.
Thanks.
I would have, yeah. So cats can be a nice to have. I could have that nice to have.
Never mind.
Now, if you were like wearing cat T-shirts,
I might.
That could have potentially changed things. Okay, all right. So, but I think writing out. Now, the reason we tell couples to do this is because you have to pre-decide in advance what you want out of a relationship. And literally, you should write it down. Take a journal, take a piece of paper, just write, here's my non-negotiables, what I'm going to require out of someone that I date, and here's some nice-to-haves. We've had our girls do that. We think that's important. But the key is not just to write them down, but then to follow them. And one of those non-negotiables is that you will require confirmation in the person that you're going to marry before you actually decide you're going to marry them. You'll require confirmation from other people.
Mm-hmm. And bring people in on that list, because I know when our oldest daughter did it, she had a few that we actually slid to the non-negotiable, like I think
or
it was
the nice to have.
Or
list?
sorry,
yeah,
yes,
nice
sorry, yes. And it was so bring people in. They will give you some sanity. Like, that is actually not important, or this actually needs to go over to the important.
Yeah.
So
let me read you some scripture. Proverbs 15:22. Refuse good advice and watch your plans fail. Take good counsel and watch them succeed. And applied to a dating relationship, if you want to make a good decision with who you marry, you have to ask for advice from other people. If you'll do that, you'll succeed. If you refuse to do that and you just go about this on your own, you'll likely fail in dating and choosing someone that's probably going to be right for you. Really, really good piece of advice. Hey, I hope this has been helpful for you. Let me see if there's any other, maybe not a lot of other questions. So I hope you'll join us for the rest of the series that we're going to be in, just to make sure you're making great decisions. Throughout the whole rest of the series, I'm going to be talking to those of you that are single and want to date, and those of you that are dating. There's going to be a whole lot more advice, but maybe I'm just going to end with this. I want to talk to the person out there that feels like there's not a lot of hope. And maybe you've had a lot of failed relationships. I want you to know that with God's help, there's always hope. And keep trusting in Him. And some of the best advice I could give those of you that want to find someone that God has for you is, here's what you do. You chase after Jesus as fast as you can, and you look around to see who's keeping up. But I also want to talk to those of you that are maybe joining in and you've not made a decision to follow Jesus. And you've never gone all in. I hope you know that God loves you and He's probably been chasing after you. And if you ever want to have a relationship that works, it only happens when Jesus is not only inside of you, but Jesus is at the center of your relationship. So for someone out there today that has never decided to follow Jesus and be baptized, I want to just challenge you that maybe you're joining in today because God wants to get a hold of your heart, and He wants to ask you to go all in with Him. And if that's you, please reach out to any of our pastors. We'd love to help you on that journey. But we want to tell all of you that are joining in today, we love you. We're so thankful that you'd even spend some time with us. And we really hope that it's been a little bit helpful for you. We're here to help in any way as a church. So please reach out to one of our pastors if we can continue to support you in any way. And remember, relationships work when they're done God's way. Have a great night, everybody. Love you guys.